everyone, today I'll be watching They Designed This Pokemon to Be Bad. They Fail by Mr. VGC. That's Wolfey. Hi, I'm Maple. I like Pokemon. I do Kaizo Ironmon and Nuzlocke. And you know, other games too, but mostly Pokemon. Okay, I'm gonna get to the React corner. I'm excited to watch this with you guys today. If I sound a bit off, I got a cold.
When we say legendary Pokemon, we typically just mean whatever creature Game Freak has shoved into that category by saying, this one's extra rare. You're only gonna see it on like 60% of competitive teams. But
Okay, this one kind of bamboozled me when I was playing like Pokedoku. Sometimes I accidentally mix up like mythicals and legendaries and then I lost. So I'm like, oh, well, you know what? This one's extra rare. Yeah, it was a mythical instead.
there are some Pokemon who live up to the mantle in literal terms. Tales whisper of a Pokemon responsible for the very architecture of the planet, a Pokemon who hoisted our continent to their resting places, an unrivaled craftsman who massaged life into creations forged from the world's elemental materials, and the owner of the most heavenly voice to ever grace our ears. This is the story of
Yay.
a legend. This is the story of Regigigas, and this is the story of the worst legendary Pokemon in the game. And
Aw.
how, after a decade and a half of suffering, Regigigas broke free of its shackles and became not only good, but great. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Because in order to understand how this happened, we need to first take a look at Regigigas and just what has been holding it back. Fans of Regigigas' creations fought through arcane riddles just to see the faces of its children. Seriously, how was a kid without internet or a guidebook supposed to understand that Braille was the key to getting 3 legendary Pokemon in Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald?
I understood getting the Braille part, it's just the rest of it. Yeah, because when I was a kid, I recognized it because I think Braille was like a topic touched upon in elementary school. I don't think that's the case for everywhere, obviously. But I also had like a dictionary that had like a guide to Braille on it. So when I saw it, I was like, wait, I think I recognize this. And I felt so smart.
Regigigas presents a different riddle. How is it possible that a Pokemon with stats as good as these is considered absolutely unusable?
Slow start.
The answer, as I'm sure most of you already know, is
Yeah.
its ability. Regigigas is saddled with one of the absolute worst abilities in the entire franchise: slow start.
I have like PTSD from like a Regigigas though, just because I tend to play a lot of like randomizers, and when the ability gets randomized away and Regigigas instead doesn't have slow start and it gets randomized into huge power, life orb, and then it gets Giga Impact on you, and then you just fucking explode. That's my experience with this thing. It's not everyone's, but fuck me for playing a randomizer, right?
Of the absolute worst abilities in the entire franchise: slow start. The way it works is that when Regigigas hits the field, both of its attack and speed stats are halved for 5 turns. For my fellow nerds out there, you know that I'm talking not about the base stat, but about the actual stat. Don't worry if you don't know what this means. Basically what you need to know is that because of the way that Pokemon calculates stats, this drops the Pokemon with continental shifting strength to a level lower than most Route 1 rats.
Okay, but his ability slow start is just like me in the morning. I like rot in bed for way too long after my alarm goes off, and you know, I feel like kinship to Regigigas because of that.
This isn't even hyperbole, like I'm actually not exaggerating. With slow start active, Regigigas' base attack stat is functionally 54, which places it lower than Rattata, Eevee, and Pikachu. That's not to mention its speed stat, which craters into the ground. It does get to keep its bulk, but for the first 5 turns that Regigigas is on the field, it's basically a glorified punching bag like Wobbuffet. Honestly, maybe Wynaut is a better comparison. To add insult to injury, Regigigas was unable to learn the move Protect until Generation 8,
Oh.
4 generations after it released. This meant that there was no real way to stall out your slow start turns without being vulnerable. You simply had to sit in the field and take hits until Regigigas finally got its act together.
You know, this image over here about Regigigas trying to hide behind a tree, that feels like me when I'm playing any sort of stealth game and I'm like, please don't notice me. And they notice me like instantly. I'm looking at you, Metal Gear.
Simply had to sit in the field and take hits until Regigigas finally got its act together. Have you ever seen those videos where like world champion athletes race people and they give them like a huge head start and then they still win? Like I think there's one with Michael Phelps letting Shaq get a huge lead and still just leaving him in the dust. I've always thought those videos were pretty cool to kind of get a sense of how much better these athletes are than like your average person, or I mean, not that Shaq's an average person, but whatever. But imagine someone saying that you can take the head start and then they're just like sitting there like smugly biding their time thinking, yeah, of course I'm gonna win. And then when they hop in the pool, they just immediately drown. That's Regigigas. For whatever reason, Game Freak just decided that Regigigas' identity would be totally wasted potential. To the point that in Legends Arceus, a game without abilities, they specially programmed in an effect exclusive to Regigigas to ensure that when you encounter it, it is still a total pushover.
Bro, they fucking hate him.
Okay, you get the message, right? Regigigas was clearly designed intentionally to be bad.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that that's okay. I talked about this in another video about why Game Freak making some Pokemon bad on purpose is actually a good thing for the franchise overall. And in that video, I put Regigigas in the archetype of the Achillean hero. Massively powerful in theory, but they have one huge drawback. Regigigas gets to be simultaneously overpowered and totally weak, which is a neat bit of texture in a massive world that makes it memorable despite its missing tournament results. Now, as long as we're talking about Regigigas, I do feel like I should tell you that in my second year competing, I actually used Regigigas to place second at a regional championships. It was one of the largest tournaments at the time. But I did do this by ignoring its offensive stats completely and using Thunder Wave, Confuse Ray, and Rock Slide to effectively rage bait my opponents. In all other cases, the fact remains. Legendary figures are consigned to specific fates. And in this case, Regigigas' fate is to be eternally terrible, just a few turns away from greatness, endlessly pushing its boulder up a 5-turn long hill that it'll never reach the summit of. But is fate truly immutable, unchangeable? Regigigas may have an Achilles heel, but that didn't stop Achilles himself from going down in history as a great warrior, right? Is there any way to make Regigigas work despite its awful ability? Well, ever since Regigigas was introduced, players have tried to do just that, experimenting with a myriad of techniques to get rid of slow start, using moves that get rid of abilities ranging from Gastro Acid to Skill Swap.
I like it when they play around with Pokemon that have like dog shit abilities and then try to make it work. There's a lot of respect to that because it's a lot of experimentation. Like me, when I played a lot of card games like Yu-Gi-Oh before, I was terrible at deck building. So when I see other people try to come up with decks that actually work, and like, say, it applies for Pokemon too, right? When they try to come up with like very gimmicky strats that will somehow work, I'm like, oh, that's neat. I like that. Do more of that. I like gimmicky stuff.
The most common attempt, though, was via Worry Seed Whimsicott. Worry Seed changes the ability of whatever it hits to the ability Insomnia, which is mostly useful in this case because it overwrites Slow Start. Whimsicott could use its Prankster ability to ensure that this worked most of the time, and then really kick things up a notch with Tailwind. It sounds pretty viable, and yet somehow, all of these attempts over the years to make Regigigas work universally flopped. Why is that? While Tailwind does literally make Regigigas go faster, the problem is that this game plan is just too slow in terms of game momentum.
Yeah, you sacrifice 2 turns to try to set up your Regigigas basically, and you could just be doing that with literally any other Mon, where Whimsicott can just set up a Tailwind normally, and your other Mon's already ready to go.
Regigigas starts the battle 5 turns behind. Whimsicott can cut that down a lot, but it can't cut it down entirely. You still need to invest half of a turn to click Worry Seed to let Regigigas do anything. If the opponent had a way to stop Whimsicott from moving, such as Fake Out, you'd end up starting the battle super far behind. Because remember, Regigigas didn't learn Protect. I guess what I'm trying to say is that with this strategy, if anything ended up going wrong, you might just not be able to recover because of how bad Regigigas was with its ability active. So shaving off 4.5 turns wasn't enough. For Regigigas to succeed, players somehow needed to lose 0 turns. They'd need to turn off Regigigas' ability as soon as the battle started. But that shouldn't be possible, right? Enemy abilities got you down. Your own abilities got you down.
Wait.
Introducing Weezing's Ability Be Gone, the revolutionary all-in-one ability repellent from the same people who brought you such hits as Gastro Acid. With our patented neutralizing gas technology, you'll never have to worry about anything in your battles again, other than moves, items, types, stats, natures, but hey, not abilities. Side effects may include breathing, stomping, tantrum. Sorry about that.
That's still cute. Oh, I like that. It's like an old TV ad.
These unskippable ads are just getting really out of control. Anyway, it's me again, here to ask you to subscribe. You should do it, it helps the channel, and you get to see more videos. But I should tell you that the side effects include breathing, stomping, tantrum. In Sword and Shield, Weezing received a Galarian regional form. While Galarian Weezing, let's be honest, is probably most memorable for the fact that it's got the claim to #1 in the Pokemon wearing clothes category.
Neutralizing gas for that ability? I'm bad at remembering abilities.
It also came with a slightly less ostentatious addition. Its new signature ability, Neutralize.
Never mind, I'm okay.
Hello, it is I, Shmomipo, and I'm here to tell you, subscribe!
Gas. In fact, Game Freak took the opportunity of Generation 8 to give both forms of Weezing this ability, a retcon for a classic Pokemon. Neutralizing Gas nullifies almost all other abilities on the field whenever Weezing is present, and it activates immediately. That's right, almost all abilities, including Slow Start. You're probably seeing how this is going to come together, right? At long last, Regigigas, who had previously been running the race 5 steps behind everything else, finally gets to start on even footing. But the instantaneous effects of neutralizing gas weren't the only plus. Weezing doesn't just let Regigigas take off at the starting gun, it stops a lot of other things from slowing it down along the way. I focused most of this video so far on slow start because that was like the biggest issue, right? But the truth of the matter is that Regigigas had a few other metaphorical hurdles that it still had to leap. As a pretty linear physical attacker, it absolutely hates dealing with Intimidate.
Yeah, okay.
Which lowers its physical attack stat. But with our brand new neutralizing gas, that's not actually a problem anymore. You also should consider that by the time Sword and Shield came out, the list of Pokemon who rely on their abilities to be broken runs actually quite long. Threats like Weather Setters, Prankster Pokemon, and of course the dreaded Incineroar.
Incineroar! Incineroar! Was Incineroar mentioned earlier? I feel like he always tosses in like really early and I tend to miss it, but Incineroar!
All of these Pokemon lose access to some of their biggest strengths in the mere presence of Weezing. And the advantage here is that as the player running Weezing and Regigigas, you could build your team in a way that wasn't as reliant on abilities, while the other players found themselves finally experiencing what Regigigas knew firsthand for years, the pain of starting the battle a step behind. Meanwhile, Weezing actually got to, make a move on the first turn instead of just being on worry seed duty. And that's part of the reason why, for a few months during Sword and Shield, everyone had Gigas on the brain, because it became not just this niche composition, but a top threat in the competitive metagame. But I haven't given you the whole picture yet. For you see, there was still one more big factor that let Regigigas have its day in the sun. Literally. Regigigas is one of those Pokemon who, despite being separated by 4 generations, seems to have been designed specifically for a generational gimmick from far past its release date. In this case, it has to tip its massive head to Galar once more, who gave it both some British pollution tactics for its partner and the boon of Dynamax. Before Dynamax, Regigigas' massive bulk was a mere method of prolonging its torture, and the futile hope that you would somehow survive for 5 turns. But with both neutralizing gas and Dynamax, Regigigas became a behemoth foe, near impossible to take out in 1 turn, and capable of dropping enemies in 1 single attack. Dynamax doubled a Pokemon's HP, and when you consider that Regigigas actually has incredible natural defense stats, you can probably start to see that Regigigas might be sticking around for more than 5 turns, even though it doesn't have to with Weezing around.
Oh, 372 HP. I forgot that Dynamax like doubled your HP. I only played Sword and Shield for a little bit, but holy shit. Yeah, this is one of the details I forgot.
All this bulk also made Regigigas a very good user of Life Orb, which was the best offensive option for most Dynamax attackers. This is because of the weird interaction it has with the mechanic. Dynamax gives all your moves a power boost, and Life Orb also gives them a separate power boost, and when you combine these 2 factors, you get powerful multiplicative scaling. This is actually the most scaling you can get out of your item because the Choice Band and Choice Specs item, which are normally the ones that give you the most power, don't work when your Pokemon is Dynamaxed. It's not just the power boost though, because for some reason, when you are Dynamaxed, the recoil damage you take from Life Orb is halved.
Oh, so he's just a monster. Okay, I understand.
It deals only 5% of your total HP as opposed to its usual 10% cost. Now there is a downside here, which is that if you build your Regigigas specifically to be used inside of Dynamax, then it's going to be hogging your Dynamax most of the time. However, that's not so much of a problem because it's a really good Dynamax Pokemon, one of the best in the game actually. And there actually was an upside to planning on Dynamaxing Regigigas every time you brought it. You could choose to use specific moves on Regigigas because you knew that you'd be spending most of your time in big mode. Specifically, Regigigas was free to run Giga Impact as its normal move of choice. This move is almost never used in normal circumstances because out of Dynamax, it causes you to waste your next turn and also it can miss. But when you are Dynamax, it turns into Max Strike, and an absurdly powerful version of Max Strike as well that not only has no drawback, but also has the secondary effect of dropping both of your opponent's speed stats whenever it hits something.
Oh, yeah, no, I've heard. I was like, damn. Max Strike? Oh my god, I don't think I ever. Have I even used Max Strike? It drops their speed stat? Wait, that's insane.
This is a big deal because it not only does absurd damage, but also Regigigas is kind of like at the upper middle end of speed, and so if you drop an opponent's speed stat, you'll probably outspeed them on the following turn. This is especially useful because Regigigas drops the speed stat of the partner Pokemon as well, so even if you KO one Pokemon, you still get the benefit of dropping the other one's speed. It's also worth remembering that Dynamax moves and their secondary effects still work, even if you protect against them. They actually still do a quarter of the damage. Normally, if you attacked with a max move into protect, you would assume it wouldn't do that much damage, but given how strong Regigigas was, it was often doing half of a Pokemon's health, even if they protected. If a Pokemon didn't protect and they didn't resist normal,
They just die.
or they weren't Dynamax, they were probably taking a one-way trip to the Shadow Realm when matched up against Max Strike. It wasn't even like Max Strike was Regigigas' only option either. It also has incredible coverage moves, including High Horsepower, Ice Punch, Thunder Punch, even Iron Head and Darkest Lariat saw some play. Most of the time though, you were pretty happy if you were just clicking the big button. Regigigas, once unable to do more damage than Eevee, quickly racked up its own portfolio of MLG montage-ready one-shots. Let me be clear, this was not just a passing fad inspired by the chance to finally make a meme Pokemon actually good. Regigigas was a real threat, something I can tell you firsthand because I played against it in the finals of the Players' Cup 2, which was the biggest tournament of the official circuit when events went online during the pandemic. My opponent teamed Regigigas with two of its most common partners in Regieleki and Urshifu Single Strike.
The
Both of them do
Regigang
have great
gang.
abilities that they like to use, but they can function okay without them. You didn't have to ignore abilities completely when building a team with Regigigas, because realistically, these Pokemon were only coming in once Regigigas, Weezing, or both of them were off the field. Regieleki and Urshifu were more than capable of cleaning up games on their own, especially after Regigigas got to work. And Urshifu in particular was quite nice because it could remove those pesky ghost types early on alongside Regieleki, basically opening the door for a Regigigas sweep. Choice banned Single Strike Urshifu also loved the speed control provided by Max Strike, because if Weezing went down and the opponent's speed was dropped, it could just come in and click Wicked Blow to tear a hole through the opponent's team before they could reposition once Regigigas or Weezing went down. My opponent also brought Torkoal and Venusaur, with the idea being that you could split the team into 3 distinct pairs, each of them enabling the other for a
Okay, so I remember this, like the Venusaur, Chlorophyll, Sun Team, Sleep Powder. Sleep Powder Venusaur.
massive amount of strength. I did end up winning the finals, but I also lost to this team earlier in the tournament. And I think the fact that it made it this far in the first place is a testament to Regigigas' strength. It also, however, showed us Regigigas' weaknesses. Regigigas may have shielded its Achilles, but it had really only transferred that weakness somewhere else. Take a look at this clip from Game 4 of the Grand Finals.
Torkoal tries to protect as well. Regigigas' high horsepower. Look at how little it does.
That is a 4 times super effective move. It did 34 damage. Without Weezing, Regigigas is a laughingstock, and that means that while Weezing could click other moves, it often spent most of its time trying to stay alive, so it could continue enabling the real threat. Despite this, Weezing and Regigigas were mainstays for the second year of Sword and Shield. They top-4'd the next Players' Cup and ran absolutely rampant on the ladder. They were a duo that you had to respect when you were building your team. What was your Regigigas answer? Could you handle it both in the front or in the back? Could you get rid of the Weezing fast enough? If not, could you even survive a Max Strike? And if you did, could you survive the second one after your speed got dropped? These were all real concerns that you had to think about as a result of Regigigas becoming prominent. And of course, the Regigigas teams weren't staying static either. They also evolved. Oftentimes, players would pressure you into using specific counterplay to try and deal with the massive threat that was a Dynamax Regigigas with no ability, and then they would catch you off guard by going with a totally different mode that required very different counterplay, like Torkoal and Venusaur. The fact that Regigigas only required Weezing to be strong and not much more meant that teams using it could be flexible with the other 4 Pokemon, making them even more difficult to predict. But unfortunately, Slow Start was not Gigas' only exposed Achilles. Once again, its greatest vulnerability was the very thing that granted its strength. If Regigigas without Wheezing was a laughingstock, then Regigigas without Dynamax was a not-so-funny joke.
Aww.
Yes, it could function, but it needed the extra bulk and the extra power from Max Strike to really be a threat. There's two pieces of evidence that I want to talk about to support this. First was Sword and Shield Series 10, which banned Dynamax, and subsequently saw Regigigas drop off the face of the very earth that it
Series 10 banned Dynamax? Oh, that feels very funny for, I don't know, just the Dynamax like region. Oh my god, I didn't know that.
helped construct. This is the thing. Dynamax was so good for Regigigas that without it, it felt terrible by comparison. Even though compared to using it with Slow Start, it then felt amazing. Dynamax had given players a taste of what Regigigas could be, and they weren't willing to settle for less after trying it. The other piece of evidence? Well, that would be the last 2 years of Scarlet and Violet. Regigigas and Wheezing have been legal for a huge portion of the last 2 years. But if you told me that they were still
Whoa.
hiding in the basement of Snowpoint Temple, I'd have no choice but to believe you because I haven't seen any Regigigas. It is worth noting that the duo did manage to make day 2 at a pretty big online tournament last year, but also at the same time, the fact that this was news in the first place is kind of proof that Regigigas is back to its old ways. Actually, it may be worse than
Hey, bro fell off. Oh, well, at least he got like a little bit of time in the sun.
ever. For years, Regigigas suffered intentional humiliation at the hands of its creators. But maybe that was just it living out Slow Start on a massive scale. With Wheezing and Dynamax, it finally got its act together and had a chance to live up to its potential, only to have it all ripped away. The only thing worse than never having reached the stars in the first place is having them within the grasp of your big, weird, golem hands, only to see them slip away again.
Okay, he's just tired from moving continents and that's why he's going back to sleep, okay?
Scarlet and Violet's removal of Dynamax condemns Regigigas to more slumber, but with an added pain. The pain of hope experienced for one fleeting, glorious moment. The pain of knowing that you have the potential you can't access. And the pain of Game Freak's newest, and I would say largest, insult to Regigigas yet. They took Slow Start and they gave it to freaking Varoom.
They what? This thing has slow start? They what? Bro, this is news to me. Holy shit, I did not pay attention. they gave it to little guy Varu?
So Regigigas isn't even special anymore. Slow Start isn't even a signature ability. It's not even Varoom's only ability. It doesn't even have to use it. You'd never use this by choice. The humiliations never end. For now, Regigigas is consigned to slumber again. It's possible it'll sleep forever. But personally, I still have hope. And maybe a little faith.
Maybe sometime in Gen 10 they'll get a new gimmick and Regigigas will wake up again and be broken. And then everyone that plays VGC will have to deal with that then. Not me. I will watch and I'll try VGC a little bit. Then I'll go back to watching.
Maybe we're just on turn 1 out of 5. If you enjoyed this video, you might like this other one I made talking about how Rayquaza followed a very similar arc to Regigigas. Go check it out.
Well, okay. Hi. Yeah. Gang. Thank you guys for watching this video with me. I like Regigigas. I like the sounds they make. I like the Reggie sounds in general. But yeah, if you guys liked it, let me know what else you guys want me to watch. I'll see you later. Bye. Subscribe.